Hey, I'm glad you're here. In today's episode, Jai shares his perspective about being a black man in America and how sometimes that feels like being a second-class citizen. We also talked about the extremes of belief and how in times of stress, people retreat to their corner, so to speak, or retreat to their side and go more toward the extremes of belief. So I just want to encourage you in this time of unrest to continue to question and to look and not be shamed into a certain point of view or not retreat to your group for safety, but be willing to stay in the middle and ask questions and wonder and discern. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hello, and welcome to the Deepening place. Hello, Jai.
Hey Angela, how you doing?
I'm doing good. What's
Glad
up
to
with
hear
you?
it. I'm doing pretty good. Hanging out, relaxing as much as I can. That's it, just about the same way everybody else is doing, I feel.
Do you find that I know a lot of people are struggling with just feeling very low energy because of everything that's going on in the world right now. Do you struggle with that at all, or are you pretty much even keel?
No, I definitely struggle with low energy. So I say I'm relaxing and hanging out because I need to.
Yeah.
I find it very hard to get. Normally, I'm either really good at getting something started or finishing. Right now, both are very challenging. We're very, very worn out. Yeah, that's really how I feel.
I feel the same way. I find that it's really hard to stay disciplined and stay on a routine or a schedule. I just want to curl up in a ball sometimes.
Yep, might be my Saturday.
Which I think is really good, but it starts to interfere with a healthy level of functioning after a while, and I don't want to get too far over on that side of it.
I'm with you. So definitely in that battle.
I don't know if it'd be helpful for anybody, but this insight has seemed to be a little bit helpful for my clients because we're sort of conditioned to beat ourselves up if we don't maintain that standard of excellence. And, if you want to win, you got to get out there and kill it. But what I think is happening is we have all our own stuff, our own issues that we've always been dealing with. But on top of that, we have all this collective stuff. It was the global pandemic. And then on top of that, we have all this civil unrest and protesting. And the effect I think it has is that our inner children are like in that fight, flight, or freeze mode. They don't know what's going on. And there really is no relief from that. You can't turn on a news program and somebody saying, hey, you know what, this is really hard. But in November, we're going to get back to normal and it's going to be fine. Nobody can tell you how any of this is going to end. And for that reason, I think we need to show ourselves a lot of compassion because we are in that panic mode interiorly somewhere in our subconscious, if not our conscious. That's a
Hmm.
huge energy drain.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think it does tie to today's episode too, or kind of the topic I told you I would like to speak about, the second class citizen thing.
Yeah, I think that's a great segue. When you said that you wanted to, because we ended the last episode with that, we mentioned, or you mentioned feeling like a second class citizen. So what about that, or have you thought anything about it since?
Yeah, really, what you just said brought it up. Being a second class citizen is kind of like going through a pandemic all the time. So much of life has so much uncertainty, and we talk about generational trauma, but which is real, but it doesn't account for like the lifelong, like living in that, right? Just being a child of a generation that's struggling, dealing with second class citizenship and just how you go through life. To be more specific, kind of if black has been a problem for you in your life, then you can resonate with like where's the peace going to come from? When's it going to change? Where's all it going to change? And then the level of sort of weird comfort you have to have, and I think it almost internalizes into this permanent, head state of second class citizen in so many different ways, maybe even second class sort of person. I want to make it
Hmm.
more individual. But it definitely resonates with that what you're telling your clients to help them with. That's what it feels like being one here, or that's what the experience is here in America,
Yeah.
and I'm sure anyone.
Yeah.
And that's what really set with me. And for people that are, if you know, really struggling to understand it, just think about that example right there. If really struggling, like, well, what is the Black experience sort of felt like? Not for every Black person, but the Black experience. It's felt like an ongoing pandemic for, I don't know, for forever, depending on who you ask.
You're the one here, so let's ask you if you don't mind.
Sure.
Like, if anybody's been listening to the podcast, we touched on your story in the episodes Baby Yoda toward the end, and then
Hmm.
in Everything We Need, and then also Weird Wasteland. And so I feel like I kind of have the overview, at least, of maybe what you're talking about. But can you tell me a little bit, just to you personally, not so much overarching, but personally for Jai, how do you experience that? What has that been like for you?
Second class citizen has shown up so many different times. High school had to be number one. That had to be the first time it was really prominent and prevalent, you know, going to a mostly white high school, but it wasn't just that it was white. It was also based on affluence and money and feeling second class in that space. Sometimes because I'm Black and there were like some pretty outwardly racist people there, but also sometimes because I didn't have money. And going to that school and being Black and not having money were pretty closely associated. That felt like second class citizenship. In college, dating, having my own personal story of it sort of being a new world to me, but also going to a very predominantly white college at LSU. The
Mm-hmm.
dating scene there feels like that. Being around anyone that isn't Black, which is normally just white at that university, it's kind of like a caricature sort of situation. I had so many friends that would tell me, "Hey, you're the first Black person I've ever really been friends with," and it's almost like this display show that you're on. That's what it felt like. That I felt I was on. This one's like almost like a display show. It's like I'm just a person too, man. I grew up in this country, but I guess there's something different about me and y'all's perspective. And that's how I internalized those things at the time. It was sort of
Yeah.
like always having to fit into some other pre-established world.
In those two examples that you gave, they're a little bit different. In the first, to high school, it almost seems like the attitude was, and I'm taking this not just from what you just said, but what we talked about earlier in those episodes. It was almost like a ministry to have these Black children from a disadvantaged area. Did you feel that way at all?
There was an actual direct program there for that at that high school. They got
Yeah.
kids mostly from one school called Bishop Perry, which was an all Black, low income sort of private school, and they particularly funneled children from that school. So yes, that was, and I did those tours. They would pull me out of religion class.
Yeah. So you were like the representative,
Yeah, senior
not,
year, I remember missing most of class, like most of religion class, to go do those tours, do school day visits for poor Black kids coming to the school.
and also from before, I think that they didn't make an effort to see you as a young man first. They didn't make an effort to like really understand your experience and work with you from that point. You were just, aren't you lucky to be here? And not really take into consideration your unique perspective or lived experience.
As an institution, though, I would say it was more institutional than personal, really. There were a few teachers who just totally didn't get it. I know I've spoken about that before. One teacher who really did get it. Overall, it was the second class really came from just the entire structure of a school like that, right? It does not mesh with the lifestyle that you go home to. And that's something else that seemed to be very particular to Black, whether forgetting about the perspective of money or how much money you have. That was something that was, reflective of Black.
Even that having money is something that people take for granted. Like if I have $5 or $10 in my purse if somebody says, hey, let's go get ice cream, no problem. But for people in poverty, they don't have any extra money or means to get around. It's hard to kind of keep up and be a part of the group if you don't have that, even if you're allowed, if you don't have the resources.
Exactly. So there's a whole cultural or like social aspect that gets kind of baked into it. And truthfully, those were kind of the minor points of that experience. The second class really did come from. Well, no, see, that is institutional as well. We had a very, very nice food setup at that high school. There's a lot of food to buy all the time, like all the time. And it's kind of a thing at that school, what kind of food you're getting, how many snacks you're getting. It's not uncommon to want to spend 7, 8 bucks a day on food for kids there. That's not uncommon. It's like that was barely my college and first year teaching budget for food, you know? So back then it was definitely a stretch.
Did you just not go without or do without?
Sometimes just do without. Pretty much always had lunch money, and it would allow you to overdraw your account to a negative point. So sometimes my balance would just be negative for a while, so my parents could settle it. Or later on in high school, and I could either flip CDs or Yu-Gi-Oh cards or write people's papers, whatever I could do for money. Until then, I would just
Anything. Pay
yeah,
off your balance.
pay off my balance, pay off the
Yeah.
balance. Yeah,
I know this might seem like a minor point. Maybe why are we focusing on this? But I think a lot of what we're calling racism is it's more of a blindness. It's like you're not considering someone else's perspective. And I think we all kind of get wrapped up in that. Like, hey, we're not racist. We have Black people in our school. But in order for us to come to a place of unity, it really is understanding each other and the differences and allowing ourselves to see where someone else has had a little bit harder time or a much harder time with things. And so in a little micro way, this is an example of that.
yeah, it is. It's exactly an example of that. The racism here is really putting everyone into the same competition pool, more or less, when it's just not appropriate. It's not good for anyone. It's not good for the people hosting the company. It's not good for that high school. It's not good for the people going through that
Hmm.
system. And that's really the point. Yeah, that's really the point. It's not good for anyone.
It's really complicated too. And we've said this the whole time. These issues are super complicated. I grew up in the South. I grew up in Georgia, and I had a very distinct idea about what racism was. And to me, it was more of an intentional thing. I knew of racist people. And in this case, is that racism, or is it ignorance, or is it both? Or is it different? For the kids in the school, was it ignorance? And maybe for some of the administration who should have known better, maybe that leaned more into racism. Is there any distinction for you in that?
There is. There is. It's a bit of both or all. It's definitely ignorance, right? So I see when the person isn't necessarily like having racist practices or even tendencies, but works in an institution that clearly doesn't take race into any sort of context and needs to, like an educational institution. I think a lot of this country, a lot of people, I think just people don't understand how institutions and systems can marginalize people without ever having seen them. You know, people, I think the ignorance there is that data is blind when it's not. It's just how a picture's painted of people, and it's really up to the person viewing that picture. So I think it's just ignorance from the person's standpoint. And then some of it, like you're saying, some of it is willful. How do I see racism? Sometimes, I've seen racist people in the world, and that means someone's going to call me the N word or give me the silent treatment or give me a stinky look, do something that overtly shows I don't like you. There are those overt people, but they are not ever on the top of my list for like a threat. I'm almost happy when someone says or it comes out that they're in the KKK. That's great. We know who they are. They're being open faced about it, and it's different from what is the scariest races, which are people who they smile in your face the whole time they want to take your place. I forget who the song is. The new people know it as Drake's song, but those are the scary ones. The ones who are cool to your face, but are aware of sort of the institutions and systems that are in place, and keep schools and keep businesses and keep government entities from shifting institutional policy, which comes back to
Yeah.
me towards the Democratic Party. That's a great example of smiling your face and the whole time want to take your place. Just fake. That's the scary racism.
Yeah. I mean, let me ask you this. This is one of the problems I've had with everything we're experiencing right now. I think there are good people everywhere who want to do good. Let's make them useful instead of guilty. The current movement, the current trend right now is to make everybody guilty. If someone is truly just ignorant and you enlighten them in some way, whether that's saying, hey, you don't understand my experience, read this book or look at this article or let me share with you something that happened to me. And their eyes are kind of open and they go, oh my goodness, what can I do? Or how can I help? Or what can I do to change it? To me, that is ignorance. If you go past that, if you bypass that and continue on your way and discount it, then it becomes willful ignorance, which is a form of racism.
Hmm. I think willful ignorance is definitely a form of racism.
The people who it's inconvenient to see the truth.
It's inconvenient, it's painful. So like I have been in more than one relationship now where the parents of the person I'm dating, I know that they come from classically open N-word using families, just white families. And a point of contention is always that the story has always sounded like my parents have seen these things and they see us dating or whatever has happened. They just shut it all off. They never want to talk about it. They just take a blind eye to it. And that's when I do put up a shield, like, oh, that's willful ignorance. You really don't want to know more, and it sounds and it looks like, someone starts telling their story. They see the black or some marginalized story, and that person is like, oh, I hear you, but this or but that or but this, openly saying I don't have any experience from that community or from that walk of life, but then actively not wanting to listen to anyone's story from that, and that's willful ignorance in that context. Yeah, man, that's being racist. Shut up and listen.
A real person who can share with you a perspective that you don't really get and you're not open to hearing it.
Yes.
Remember the episode we did, The Extremes of Belief, and we talked about how instead of coming to the table to talk things out, people go to the extremes and they cling to their belief systems. In this example, here is my daughter who's dating this man, and because of my background, I need to believe that we've all kind of had an equal shot, and Black people are where they are because of their choices.
Yeah, that sounds like something I almost heard verbatim once. Yeah. But it's all choices for black. Yes, that's a great way to put it. That's what it's normally said. It's all choices. I had a friend recently post on Facebook. Man, really cool dude, but he posted some really ignorant crap on Facebook. Like the playing field's even, race doesn't matter. And he got a lot of flack for it, I guess. I don't know. I don't read the comments too much. It's like, man, he's being willfully ignorant. I used to march next to this guy in drumline in college for like years. We stood right next to each other. He's a
Yeah.
very loving, large teddy bear type attitude sort of guy who's like a youth church leader or something.
Yeah.
And even he's still posting like I don't want to hear it. Here's the truth, even
Yeah.
though I have no experience. Here's just the truth, and everyone needs to take it for what it is. Disappointing. It's disappointing to see people still kind of choosing willful ignorance. But yeah, if you're asking, it's still super prevalent, and there's a whole younger generation picking up on it too.
I think people are so afraid right now that they are clinging even more tightly. That seems convenient for him to believe, because then he knew you at one time. He knows you. Like we forget that we are in relationship with people. We turn to our group and cling to our beliefs because it feels like a safer place.
Yeah, yeah,
I've had one in particular relationship has gone south because of all of our current issues in society. I want to ask her, like, don't you remember conversations that we had, all the things that we had in common? And now if she's completely gone to her group, and it's a betrayal to that, to see me anymore as a friend or a sister, because I'm
yeah.
different. It's just a crazy time.
It's a very revealing time. It seems like another layer of the veil or curtain has been pulled back. If the whole thing is just not off the hinges at this point, that's really how it feels. There's no
Yeah.
time for hiding anymore. People are clearly wanting to do better, or clearly wanting to sort of stay in their pocket. Yeah, stay in their pocket of comfort, like you were saying, or just trust in their pocket, which I understand that as well. Like you said, some times are uncertain. That experience as a second class citizen, or in terms of what it feels like to be marginalized and trying to be put there. It's a place of fear is what it comes down to. And I get it.
Yeah.
People, I get it. You kind of curl up into your ball and whatever the case. That's why I think race has a special caveat in this country. And I'm really still learning like how special that caveat is. Race has a caveat in that, like, as this guy, he's a white guy. His family is fine, very well, fine off. I would say that what would help is if he didn't take the luxury of kind of going back to his corner and doing that. That's not necessary for that man right now. He doesn't need that
Yeah.
safe zone to go back and not worry. Maybe he does, but I don't know from what
It's
angle.
It's just kind of an intellectual laziness.
Hmm.
And, we've said before, belief is budget truth.
Yeah.
I will have to say, though, that I think because, I am white, I do think that people are nervous because of it seems like there's, how do I say this? You know how you told me last time we recorded that you didn't really get what Lives Matter was after. You didn't really understand. Here you are as a Black man with very real experiences in America with racism, with success, with moving in mainstream circles. And even you are saying, I'm not really sure what they're after. I don't know if I can, go along with that. As a white person, I think the feeling is I'm either in or out. And so that is crazy to me. So I'm going to go back over here. That is what is really concerning me right now, because if you don't allow someone to process and talk, and if we don't allow multiple perspectives and different ideas about how to make it better, so many of these, especially young white people that were open, are being pushed into the shadow where they are experiencing really true darkness and racists and being influenced in that way. That really concerns me. I don't know if you know what I mean by that.
I definitely got the message you were getting out there, and thank you for sharing it. Yeah, it's exactly what I was wondering about. Like, where does that need for safety and sort of like reassurance come from? And that's a great example. I do have this story, and I'm still so since we've recorded that, Angela, I've gone up and I work in a nonprofit space, so I do a lot of like deep behind the scenes research about what nonprofits are up to. So I've done my research on BLM. Like, where is the money going to? I found it. You go to their website, it's some weird, it's not uncommon, but it goes to you donate to BLM and it goes to some other charity organization that then divvies up the money into some other stuff. Long story to say, I looked through their tax records, I looked through their service records that they have to report on their 990s. I still cannot figure out what they're actually doing with the money besides advertising Black Lives Matter, which should be for free on social media. So I think I discovered another like hold up on the Black Lives Matter thing specifically. I definitely support the phrase Black Lives Matter. Most people should support the phrase, all people should
Yeah.
support the phrase Black Lives Matter. But I think the confusion is coming from the social sort of movement, and then let's literally give actual money to an organization called Black Lives Matter, which isn't even the actual organization. If you go look it up, it's not even, it's just a name that they go by so they can get more money. Yeah, even so just to your point, even doing my research and going behind the scenes, I still can't figure out why I would give to it, even if I knew what they were doing. That's good for me to hear. Thank you for saying that. It does make a lot of sense. Like I said, I'm just
Yeah.
always curious about where does that angst, what does that uneasiness, where does that hesitation come from? I'm genuinely curious from the white perspective. Like, where is it coming from? And it's a great example.
Right now, if you don't put up the black square, you are the problem. You are a racist. And there are so many different perspectives and different ideas and people doing life together. I'm in Georgia right now and have been for a little while. I've lived in the South most of my life and in Texas the last 13 or 14 years. I don't really consider Texas exactly the South. It's totally
Hmm.
different country in a way, But people in the South are doing race relations. They are. We live together. We work together. We eat together. And I think a lot of times people in these movements, they don't have a lot of personal experience. They don't have as many personal relationships. And I'm not saying it's apple pie and ice cream in the South, but it's come so far. We've made so much progress. And then all of a sudden, people are being divided. We're going in the opposite direction right now because we're not sure how to be around each other. All of a sudden, we're noticing before what we weren't noticing. Does that make sense?
It
Like I'm
really does.
aware, I'm
It really
aware of my
does.
whiteness and I'm aware of your blackness now more because, oh my God, are you going to judge me because I'm not saying the right thing? And we were getting to a point where we were seeing each other as people. And then not to say it was perfect, not to say that we had gotten there. We had not gotten there, but I hear a lot of talk about ancestors, and a lot of what our ancestors were fighting for were to be seen as a man. A lot of the Black men that were fighting wanted to be seen as a man and to get out of my way, give me the rights that you tell me that I have in the Constitution,
Mm.
and let me do my thing. Move. That's what I think we were fighting for. Not to see each other as different, to see each other as people.
To eliminate this second class citizenship,
Yeah.
to eliminate black as being the other category. And may as well say other. Still happening today. I don't know what's next for that in terms of us as a population educating ourselves. I guess it's probably another good spot to pick up on because there's a couple other sides to it in terms of going forward from the literal creation of second class citizenship and then what has psychologically happened to my people that have been through that. There's a lot of actual real individual work that has to go into, which is kind of why I want to bring this up now, because that is what I want to talk about going forward. What we have to do in the black community, and what I'm talking to my family about, and how I'm treating myself right now, and how I'm working with the people I work with, and what we have to do as a people to go forward as well.
Yeah.
Is definitely hard finding what that looks like at this point.
Are you saying that people within their own communities doing their work, and also collectively we have to learn how to work together in some way?
If we're going to stay in America, that's us black people as a people that didn't come here voluntarily. If we're going to stay here, we have to learn to be here. There's step one. We got to get some education that as a community that wasn't given to us or we couldn't build up ourselves, right? Step one. Step two, we've internalized a whole lot of trauma for a long time. And we are a community that has been hesitant about accepting that, which going back to the fear thing, I totally get it. Like literally, personally, I definitely get it, accepting how real and how hard it is to do. But I'm in a phase where we have to do that if we're going to go forward because trying to go back to step one and try to be in a country and a community, that's not going to be possible. Like you've been saying, it's not going to be possible to keep interacting with folks that are trying to understand and learn. So that stuff's triggering. And so it's just a hard conversation. It's hard work. But going forward from the second class citizen thing is destroying that mindset, some of that internalized mindset from being in that position, realistically so long. It's
Just to make sure I understand what you're saying, it's twofold for you. People need to stop treating people who are different as second class citizens. But on another level, we have to help our children, or Black people help their children understand you are not a second class citizen, both ways.
100%. I say that having just went to there's a group and it's for black teachers, and we're just talking about the travesty of letting so many black kids pass high school without knowing the information just so we can keep graduation rates up. That's what we have to stop. That does not play out well.
It's also a form of evil
Mm.
because in Texas, we are both Texans currently. The top 8 to 10% of every high school in Texas get automatic admission into the University of Texas. They did that so that people from all over the state come in. What I find to be particularly heartbreaking is you have some of these kids from these awful schools that, yeah, we were top 8 to 10%, whatever it is for that year, and they get there and they fail. And nobody tells them it's because you came from a horrible school and these other people didn't. They just are allowed to internalize that and believe that there's something wrong with them and their ability. That's what I think we need to address some of the inequities along the way so that everybody is given equal opportunity to succeed.
Here. I'm with you there. Yes. No comment.
So,
That's exactly it. Yep.
I mean, I think this just shows how many different ways we could go about it. But before we get off the call, I did want to say I just released the first episode in the Perspectives on Race. I'm really excited about that, just bringing people in to give their perspective, their lived story, what they think will help, ideas for moving forward. And those episodes are going to be less discussion. I'm treating people more like a guest where I'm just listening and hearing. I think it's so valuable right now. I had one little quote from Toni Morrison.
Mm-hmm.
She said, like failure, chaos contains information, that can lead to knowledge, even wisdom. There is no time for despair, no place for self-pity, no need for silence, no room for fear. We speak, we write, we do language. That is how civilizations heal. I believe that a podcast is a modern day form of doing language, us being able to speak and then send that out. It might help people to understand. So I really appreciate you doing that.
You're welcome. I genuinely appreciate you holding the space. It is important to vocalize. That's a great quote. Mm.
Well, I hope you have a wonderful week.
You too. I will do my best.
Okay. Talk to you later.
All right, talk to you later.